Welcome everyone. This is Nichel Anderson. I'm your host for my podcast show, Nichel Anderson Short Stories and Beyond. Thank you so much for joining me today. Let's go ahead and get started with my particular episode here. This is November the 4th, 2019, and I'm continuing on with the series entitled Future Series of Nahor and Princess Aamina. Okay, and this particular bonus 5 is entitled When Opening to the Unknown Brings Forth Anew. So we're going to go ahead and get started here, and this is for my season 3, of course, 2019 to 2020. Thank you so much for joining me, where this focus mostly based on my book Mitsrayim, a memoir, on the production that I turned it into a stage play and then a short film and then websodes as well. And it's about Egypt, of course, and that's mostly where my short stories focuses on. I do focus on other productions that I had wrote out or short stories that I came up with. For the most part this year, I'm really looking at MOLIAE doing this series. It came through most of these time. I do share that when I'm writing this, is this something at the moment that I feel by spirit just to write it, and there you have it. Now the production MOLIAE, which is my heart of hearts, that's what started all of this of my writing. It's basically in a prep phase now to return back for the 3rd time. It's a bigger production. I have decided it will be, for right now, the last time I will be doing a stage play on MOLIAE. I want to venture out and do other things, so it's in the prep stage of returning back to stage for the prestige return of MOLIAE stage play. And once I have those dates announced, I will let you know about that. You should be receiving another big announcement that I've been holding off, and it's definitely going to be in the month of November, so stay tuned for that. If you haven't already, I wrote it out there. But nonetheless, let's go ahead and let's see, went through my little checks that I want to talk about before we start my short story today, and that is releases of my podcast. Let's kind of hone on that again. It's going to be basically bi-monthly. I did take a look of the calendar again, and I noticed in December, October is 1, 2, had 5 weeks. Can you imagine? Just take a moment how hard I've been working on this. When I did the releases every week, and I had 2 podcast shows. My other podcast show, to shout out there, is Surviving Your Journey to a Success. It's a motivational type podcast that I do. So I was doing that one and this one weekly, and some of the months during the last 2 years had 5 weeks. So that means I did 10 recording, editing, which editing for each one could take at least up to an hour of editing the audio. And you go back, you're like, well, dog, I missed that, and I got to go back and do it. Then I have to load it, so it's definitely a lot of work, but it's something that I do enjoy because I'm doing something that I love on both fronts. But just to kind of get you an idea of how invested I get into projects, right? Into this creativity that I'm doing. Anyhow, now I'm doing, starting going forward, season 3 is bi-monthly. Now in October, you notice it was like every other week. Yeah, pretty much every other week. And then how it came about, it seemed like you got the next podcast sooner in this month of November, where in December it's going to be different because this is the 18th, and it's going to be at least 3 weeks before you get another one. And that's going to be pretty much the first week of December. So just keep in mind, it's, at the end of the day, it's bi-monthly, 2 times a month. Normally it would be every other month, but when you have that 5th month, it's not. So I want to hone on that my chapter notes, again, you will see that in the description, and now I am just manually typing that in each form. If you have not signed up to Spreaker as a member, you don't really get that nice pretty player. You might have another pretty player that my chapter notes are not being seen, so I am putting it in the main description of each one. And if you subscribe to MOLIAE YouTube channel, you could definitely see that now, the timestamps of the chapter notes, because I spent a lot of time on those, people to be able to see that and be able to go to the section that they want. Speaking of that, I want to talk about commercials. I'm going to jump ahead what I wanted to talk about earlier, but my commercials that I have on this podcast, please listen to the full one. Play it, walk away, or if in your car and you're listening to me, all right, on iHeart, let it play, okay? Like the 20-30 seconds, and it's in the beginning and the end. So that helps this podcast as well, with the advertisers that are tied to the show now. That's an easy way to support it. If you're not purchasing anything or whatever, which is fine, I do appreciate if you could share it, and if you can let the commercial play. Let it play. All right. The other thing is my cafe press. I want to hone on that before I start this short story. The cafe press is my merchandise. I networked with Cafe Press shop, and now you can get merchandise. And with this one, I do have an actual shop on my MOLIAE web page, right? Most of those items are mostly all the time sold out, but with Cafe Press, they have the merchandise in-house and the inventory is much more available. So I do recommend, shop there. And so for this podcast show is cafepress.com/Nichel Anderson short stories and beyond. And I also have for MOLIAE. So it's cafepress.com/MOLIAE. And I'm going to have, and that's MOLIAE, and I'm going to have those links in the description of this podcast. So go ahead and support this podcast, the production. Go over there, buy some merchandise, share it if you like it. All right. I appreciate that. All right. Okay. So this particular feature series of MOLIAE is from September that I started, and it's going to be all the way up to the first week of December. So I'm just moving forward with it. And we're going to go ahead and move on and now look at the highlights here. Okay, so the highlight is basically bonus 5, and that's entitled When an Opening to the Unknown Brings Forth the New. Where the last episode you were a part of is when Nahor gave Princess Aamina this papyrus. It was like a map. It was in an ancient language being called the third reign of Semitic language, and it deals with the dunes of Osiris. That's another element where Nahor is advancing forward and showing her things that normally it would take a process to get to, or things that they're teaching her, but then there's something else that she hasn't got to know about, and he can actually present that to her. So she was intrigued by that, and you will get to what happened next, right? So for bonus 5 is talking about from that moment when he showed her that papyrus map, what happens next. Well, that's where they will actually go to this certain location. But it's something as it's going to happen today that I want you to be aware of. Another character is going to come about, and you'll get to hear that. That's going to happen today. Now, what happened last week is basically honing on that. One path does lead to another, and it's a scene where Nahor and Princess Aamina, they're making their travels, as I mentioned, with Nahor's father Ezra, and they're on a mission by the king and queen of Mitsrayim, Milan and Hagar. Princess Aamina got to join them, and that's where he presented that papyrus that I mentioned earlier, that she's very intrigued of going to the dunes of Osiris, and that's what happened last week. So go ahead and check that out. That's bonus 4 under this series, future series of Nahor and Princess Aamina. And then again today we're going to touch on from that moment forward. All right, so let's get started. So let's begin. For this week of my podcast show, Nichel Anderson Short Stories and Beyond, entitled For the Future Series of Nahor and Princess Aamina, Bonus 5, entitled When an Opening to the Unknown Brings Forth Anew. Opening scene. It was mid-evening right before the king of rays claimed it as his own across the skies of Mitsrayim. On the second level of the royal palace to the Elise area leading to the grand round of the main entrance of the palace, we see Nahor, with his dark reddish Nubian dreads, continue to grow now to his shoulders, brushing against his Mitsrayim Egyptian breast collar plate, along with his matching white and gold Egyptian wrap and honey brown woven sandals with matching gold wristlets. Still a young boy standing near his father, and about 10 other older Thebes male attendants nearby, watching as well as the entrance of King Kohan of Sabare of his kingdom and his fellow statue of advisors. One in particular caught Nahor's eyes as he observed the royal family of Mitsrayim greeting King Kohan, and as well as his entourage. King Milan and Queen Hagar, as well as Princess Hannah and Princess Aamina, was there as well, surrounded by Mitsrayim guards and General Comrade Tatar, as he escorted King Kohan into the main area to greet his long-term friend, King Milan. Nahor watched a young boy dressed in a royal attire step forward as he walked near King Kohan of Sabare, and he walked up to Princess Aamina, who was at the same age as Aamina, and they hugged one another. That young boy, as Nahor observed, talked to Princess Aamina and said something into her ear, and they both laughed. Nahor didn't understand how that young boy then held Princess Amina's hand for a long time. It seemed to be disturbed of its purpose, Nahor thought. Next he saw that they were about to walk to the side, as the rulers of Mitsrayim and Zimbabwe suddenly motioned them to follow them instead. Just as that moment Nahor searched for understanding, his father Ezra interrupted his thoughts. Ezra spoke with authority but care. "Son, we must adjourn." He motioned for Nahor to follow. Nahor was hesitant as his facial expression looked disturbed by what he saw and confused. He turned to leave and started to walk next to his father on the second level still of the royal palace as the male Thebes attendants followed behind them. Nahor spoke of his concern. "Father, who was that with King Kohan that knew of Princess Aamina?" His father looked over to his son, for he felt an emotional connection of his beloved son there. He said, "He is the son of King Kohan. His name is Damar." Nahor held back what his deepest thoughts continued to probe his mind from what gathered of his attire. Then he asked his father Ezra, why did he greet Princess Aamina as such? For I felt there as Ezra stopped walking to look down at his son. Nahor, he is the one set to marry Princess Aamina when she turns the age of 19. It is a long deal made by King Kohan and King Milan, for the Princess Aamina and Damar have known each other since birth, same as you, my son. Ezra turned to walk on, but Nahor stood still as the knowledge engulfed his mind to his heart and risen to his soul as he absorbed the new wave of emotion. Ezra realized his son was not walking next to him and slowly turned around to face his son and saw his expression of awareness to the anew. Ezra realized what was in his son's eyes for the first time concerning Aamina. For the truth spoken by him just a moment ago about her, it was Ezra that felt the sorrow to have been the one to tell his son and realizing his feelings. Ezra then said, I thought you knew. Ezra walked slowly to his son, instantly knowing that he must be embraced. Nahor, as he instructed the male Thebes attendants to leave them for a moment as he consoled his son. Many Apsu had entered and left a total of 14 days into the future from that moment. Now we see Nahor after he instructed to Princess Aamina with the time for him to show her the dunes of Osiris. Everything was set and planned. Everything was in motion for them to meet up without being noticed. Princess Aamina did as Nahor instructed and was disguised as a regular female royal attendant and left in the corridor from her room of a secret passage to meet up on the far eastern bank of the palace. Nahor was there with a covering over his hair and shoulders. He immediately shushed her to remain quiet as he placed a similar garment over her head. Nahor tapped his hand into motion of 3, saying in Semitic to her that they did not have long. She nodded as he took her hand, and they ran into the darkness to what seemed to a lit chariot. Princess Aamina saw someone she remembered in the town that often talked to Nahor, much older than he, and then motioned them to get inside that was covered with other compartments of things. They rode in the darkness to where it seemed before the guarded gate as they successfully got out to the palace exit way. Before they exited, Nahor had to ask her of the other moment, just 14 days ago. Who is Damar? As he started to pull out some blankets and basket of things. Princess Aamina looked up surprised for him to ask. He is an old friend, the son of a ruler, King Kohan, of Zimbabwe. They are friends. He is friends with my father. And Nahor nodded in respect before speaking, not looking into her eyes. I know of that, but what is he to you? Princess Aamina paused, trying to feel, but knew she should know to not use her telepathic abilities to seek what his thoughts were at the moment. Well, we are to marry when I turn the age of 19. It was written since we were young. We are friends. But I have to do as my father and mother ordained of me as such. I cannot go against that. He is good and loved the rule of being a future king. She smiled, hoping he would see the humor as she But he didn't look up, just as he fastened some blankets and basket weaves together, just as the e-chariot stopped. Nahor reached for her hand, and they exited out of the e-chariot, and he motioned to her to run with him, and she did, down the valley of sand dunes and up the corridor that will lead to the unknown pyramid of the smallest set of those, and beneath the mirage of the palm-lit trees. Just as that moment, he unwrapped the papyrus map and motioned for Princess Aamina to hold to his arm as well, as they counted the steps as instructed, that he got someone from the earlier of the Theob's council, unknowing to them what Nahor was asking of the correct number of steps coordinated to the papyrus map. When they got to the point of where they needed to be, they knelt down facing the east with both hands before them on the sand, as the papyrus stated and was written, and as the wind began to rustle up against their faces. Nahor covered his hand over Princess Amina's hand as he said to hold on. Without moments, at that time, they were swept and swung down the sand dunes as it opened up, and they fell through the sward downward into a dome. When they finally stood up, they burst out laughing, for it was fun and exciting and surprising. And then they noticed that the observer above could still peek through the little peephole one last time, as the Kingo rays finally won to give them a more dimming light. Nahor was prepared. With few strikes, he lit his torch as he reached for her hand, and they walked further inside. They were pulled further in, both admiring the semitic writings on the walls and smiled at one another in awe, for they knew they were coming closer to the secret place of what was known as the Dunes of Osiris. Suddenly, Princess Aamina heard something afar. "What is that before us? It sounds like water." Nahor smiled. He put his arm around her shoulder. "It is the Nile, and written on the papyrus here, that leads us to the domain of the Dunes of Osiris." He showed her the papyrus and pointed to where they were, and they both slowly looked up, smiling. Then Nahor asked, "Do you wish to see time and history where the Nile begins?" Princess Aamina smiled and giggled of the thrill. "I wish to see it." End scene.